My name is Kenton Whitman, and I believe in you. This is going to be a fun one. It has to do with rainbows. And this actually kind of came to me when I was telling a story to the girls the other night about rainbows and dragons, things like that. But this awareness came up that when we look out and we see a rainbow, we have an opportunity in witnessing that rainbow to see something very intrinsic about the world, about our relationship to the world, and about world peace. Because when we really think about rainbows, we can start to think, there's something here that could change my whole basis of judgment.
Wow. Well, when I think about rainbows, one of the things that I think about is that they seem elusive or something, or hard to pin down because, for example, the other day we were at the garden and there was a tiny little bit of rainbow in the sky.
Yeah.
And you were like, there's the rainbow! And you were standing over by the garden gate. And the girls and I and everyone were in the garden. We're like, where is it? Where is it? And we saw just this tiny little smidgen. And I think you were seeing something different. And it feels like you can point out a rainbow to someone, but if they're in a different place, then it's almost either they can't see it or it's like a different rainbow.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, one of the first essential understandings about rainbows. And we're going to tie this into people in your life and everything else. So this is not just hippie rainbow stuff. So,
there's nothing wrong with that.
So right, we have this temptation to say, there's a rainbow. And we think of it as kind of a solid object, that there's a thing out there that exists and that we should all be able to see it. But what happened there is we had different positionings. So if I'm standing here and you're standing 30 meters that way, and we're looking at that same rainbow, I'm going to tell you that it starts at the lake and it ends at the pine tree, and you're going to tell me, oh, it starts at the boulder and it ends at the aspen tree. So the way I phrase it to the girls is that we think we're seeing the same rainbow. That's our first assumption. But the truth is that we're all seeing different rainbows. You will never see the same rainbow that somebody else is seeing. And I feel like we have two choices then when we're confronted with, okay, there's a rainbow and we see it in two different places. Maybe you'll see where this is going. The one choice is we can start to argue. We can say, no, I see where the rainbow is. And you say, no, I see where the rainbow is. Now we start to argue.
Okay, so I suppose then that an argument is really only possible if we're under the illusion that we're seeing the same thing. Because the other option is that we can agree that we're seeing two separate realities, if you will. Okay,
so that's the first important thing to realize about rainbows. We're all seeing a different rainbow. Now that leads us to number two, which is what's out there. If you're seeing a rainbow in one place and I'm seeing a rainbow in another place and we line up 100 other people, what does the rainbow really look like? The whole sky is filled with something, and so we might call it a meta rainbow. Okay?
Okay.
And that meta rainbow is something that none of us can see. We don't know what it looks like. In fact, we can't even imagine what it looks like. But it is a massive something of which we're only seeing a tiny little part. So here's the meta rainbow, which none of us can really conceive of. And then here's our individual consciousness, our individual perception. And the cool thing here is that the thing we call a rainbow only exists through the interaction of that meta rainbow and our consciousness. And then, through that, my own individual rainbow is created.
Wow. So, if I'm understanding this right, we have an active role in making a rainbow.
That's going to be number 3 for us here as we move through this. That active role.
Okay, so essentially there's something, and because I bring my consciousness into it, I am affecting what it is that I see, and I am creating my reality.
That's, in this case, right. That interaction is integral to create that reality that we call a rainbow. Otherwise, that rainbow won't exist.
It's such a different way of looking at the world, of thinking I'm actively creating the things I see. So you said in the beginning that this works with people. And I've been thinking the whole time we've been talking, it can't just be rainbows. It's got to be everything that I see. And when we bring it into the realm of people, then it's like that person is the same as the meta rainbow. They're the meta person that's all these things. And then I take my individual consciousness that perceives things in a certain way, and I'm an active participant in creating that person's reality for me.
That's it. Realizing that the meta person, any person you encounter, there's so much behind the scenes that we don't see.
Yeah.
We're seeing maybe 1% of what that person is, less than that. And that 1% is so colored by our own biases, our own thoughts. What we say. If I come up to somebody and I say, wow, how was that thunderstorm yesterday? Then I'm going to be bringing out certain behaviors and answers and words from them. They're probably going to not be talking to me about how they love car racing or how they feel about their children.
Right.
Okay, so rainbows are mostly a visual phenomena.
Okay.
People, we have to realize, are mostly a mental phenomena. In the sense that if I have ideas about a person, it's going to very much color my interaction with them.
That is so true.
Yeah. And again, just like with the rainbows, we can be under an illusion. So you and I are sitting here and we're looking at Marianne over there. And we can say, she has black hair, she has brown eyes, she's wearing a pink dress. Now we think we're seeing the same person because we fooled ourselves into that illusion just by looking at the rainbow and saying, oh, red, orange, same colors, same rainbow. Same superficial observation and same person. Yet, in your mind, you are probably seeing a very different person than I'm seeing. I'm remembering my interaction with Marianne last week that was really not very pleasant, and I'm thinking, she is just kind of a jerk. And you're remembering how she was talking about kids and just so full of love, and you're like, she is one of the most loving people I ever met.
Wow, yeah. 2 different people, 2 different rainbows, same thing.
Yeah. And there's the meta Marianne, beyond our imagination, and we'll never know the full Marianne. But we live in this little illusion of, I've got her pegged, I've put my little box around her, and now I understand what she is. We can argue now too. Right?
We could argue about her, exactly. Except for then we have to come back to what we learned from the rainbows, which is that Marianne is different for you than she is for me. And your distinct consciousness and perception and everything that's made that up gives you a different Marianne than me.
And that's perfect. That's the number 1. Is now we look at people and we realize that I am literally seeing a different person than you are seeing. And when we see that, now we're not going to be able to argue about that person in the same way, right? And hopefully that's going to lead me to starting to listen more than judge.
Receptive.
Yeah.
Being receptive and taking in what what we are observing without making complete and defined judgments about them.
Right. I know what she is. I'm ready to defend that and argue about it. But if I know that the only Marianne that exists in the way I think she does is in my mind, you've got your own Marianne, then how can I argue with you? Instead, I want to listen to you and say, what have you seen about her?
Well, what I love about this too is that even within your own context, instead of going, oh, I know Marianne, she's like this, you say, oh, wait a second, there's this whole Marianne that I don't even know of, and if I'm receptive and I just don't put her in a box, what might I learn about her? And I feel that happens to us in life a lot. It's that classic where you judge somebody. Well, I've been waiting for you for the last 3 hours, and the person shows up and, they've had a flat tire, and then they, had this problem and that problem, and suddenly you feel guilty for yelling at them because you didn't realize, you thought, oh, they're just standing you up, right? So it's like that openness of understanding that there's more than you know.
Yeah, that's number 2.
Oh,
which
hey,
is
I should do this all the time.
which is the meta person. And if I understand that there's the meta person of which I am seeing only a sliver, tiny, less than 1% of that person, then I look at Marianne so differently. I realize that my judgments about her, they're off the mark. They're only seeing a tiny fraction. And instead of trying to box her in, I'm going to approach her with that sense of wonder, that sense of curiosity of what else is there about her.
Right.
And no matter how much I learn about her, I can still pretty much guarantee I only know 1% about her. And so much more to learn.
I like it.
The last part, number 3, we are actively creative. And I don't mean creative in an artistic sense so much, although we can go that way, as creationary in our interaction with Meta, Marianne, with any other person.
Or thing.
Or thing.
Or thought.
Yeah, I mean, take this and
Right.
run with this. This is not just rainbows and people. This is
Right.
all of life.
Politics, religion, any of the stuff that you get worked up about.
Rock.
Paper, scissors. Yes.
So there she is, and as I approach her, the words that I use, the body language that I use, my mind state, my open-heartedness or lack thereof, that is going to have a profound effect on the Marianne that I experience. So no longer am I thinking, she's this external, I'm going up and I'm going to see an objective
Right.
presentation of who
Right.
Marianne is. I'm realizing that I am playing a creationary role in who she is, in the way that I approach her.
That's incredible because that gives us so much creative license in a way too, to look at someone or something, notice how we want to judge it. It's a rainbow, Marianne, whatever, but to realize I am actively creating my own perception of her. How could I get experimental or curious about that, and how could I approach her in a way where I might learn something that I never have before? How can I not have my standard approach? And then that, to me, that's kind of what's fun about life, is suddenly you might discover that Marianne absolutely loves cross-country skiing, and so do you. And oh my gosh, she was just on this trail. You've never been on it. Suddenly, down you go, a totally different person.
Connection instead of judgment and division.
Right.
Yeah. So one last thing that I'd want to point out about all this is that if we're standing 100 feet apart and we're looking at that rainbow, we're going to see it in very different places. But if we can come really close together and look, then we're going to see something much closer to the same rainbow. So in coming together in community, we start to foster a closeness of vision. I still have to realize, as close as I can get, I'm still not going to see the same rainbow. But we can get to a closer approximation. And that means that as I'm sitting next to you, and I'm not thinking of you as Marianne or the rainbow, I'm thinking of you as a co-observer. By turning that same eye onto you, that I'm using out there for the rainbow or Marianne, by being curious about your viewpoint, by listening to you, then I can start to understand your perspective, your point of view, and I might be able to see the external world a little bit more closely to what you're seeing. I don't have to change my point of view, but I can start to understand where you're coming from and foster more understanding.
Sure. So it's almost like that saying, you know, don't judge someone unless you've walked a mile in their shoes. It's very true in that even if I don't agree with you, well, it's fun to have friends that you can agree to disagree, because then you learn so much. You've stepped into that place that goes, we don't know anything really, but this is what I think and this is what you think, and let's have some fun with it. And I feel like that's the way you can start to see somebody else's reaction, somebody else's perspective, and it's very helpful. And I feel like whatever situation we enter into, even if it's somebody that we, quote, don't like, you can learn something from them. And I don't mean knowledge from them, but you can learn about yourself from them. Ooh, wow, whenever they come around, I'm always prickly. What is that about?
Yeah.
You can start to learn from others and the way that you look at the world.
In the comments, share your thoughts about this. Share where seeing things as an objective reality has gotten you stuck in life. Where coming to a more listening, curious, wonder-filled place has helped you to see the world more open-heartedly. What does that look like for you?
I would just say try it out. Pick one time today, after you've watched this video, or tomorrow if it just doesn't work. Pick one time soon and try it. See what happens.
Thank you, friends, for watching. Can't wait to hear what you have to say in the comments.